your life.
Taking Charge with successful businessman, world-renowned speaker, and best-selling author, Mark Januszewski. This is the only podcast where we end the self-help hustle and heartache and arm our listeners with everything they need to access a remarkable power within, a power beyond measure. Mark J. is the creator of the famous Master Key Experience, which publishes annually a success rate of over 98% happier, healthier, and more successful people. Mark co-created the Master Key Experience, combining science and spirituality with his wife, over 30 scientists, and the illuminated ones spanning 4,000 years. You'll quickly discover that there really are no common people. There is greatness within you, and this podcast will help you find and develop your greatness. The best news? It's in you already, and so it's free. I welcome you to our host, Mark J., creator of the Master Key Experience.
It's great to be here. Hope that you don't see this as a rant today. Anyway, this is the podcast, Taking Charge and Ending the Self-Help Hustle and Heartache. Now, we always start these things pretty much the same way, has been our tradition, which is aloha. And basically, aloha, I want to define that for you. Alo is the divine, and ha is the breath, which I didn't know until I came here. So basically, until I moved to Hawaii. And basically, it means when someone says aloha to you, which isn't just hello and goodbye, they're putting the breath of the divine on you. Now, if you're not from here, they call you a haole, which means no breath. So anyway, it's the difference between living and dying. So anyway, really glad you're here today. I want to go over a couple of key things. Hey, James Martin, blessings to you too. And everybody that's showing up, we'd love you to share this. Let people know that we're here for you. And I'm going to give you a couple of updates today. I know a lot of people have talked about it, but it'd be really nice for you to actually physically share it. Tell us where you're from. That's kind of an important thing. And get some of your friends over here. Let's see if we can't get them to think for themselves. So I'm really excited about this podcast, taking charge and ending the self-help hustle and heartache. The self-help industry really is just an extension of what I believe leads people to not thinking. And that's really what I want to talk about today is think, right? That's the thing. It's not the politicians, it's us. Think. Now, you could substitute any word in for politicians. It really doesn't matter. But what's really important is that people learn to think for themselves. And with a lot of this self-help stuff out there, which we've talked about this before in these podcasts, provides zero quantifiable results. A couple of anecdotal stories about people's successes. Yeah, that's really nice. But hey, Mark Van Horn, how are you? James Martin, over there in England. He's over in the United Kingdom. We're coming over there in early July, late June, early July, James. Hope to hook up with you. Hey, Bob, thanks for being here. Karen, aloha. So basically, you could substitute any word. I have it's not the politicians, it's us. That applies to anything. And I'm going to talk a little bit about politics today, but not about politicians, about you and me, the voters. That's the problem, because people won't think for themselves. And we find this with self-help. People go to a self-help thing, and that kind of becomes their guru, and they're letting that person think for them. This is not the way to find your potential. This is not the way to grow spiritually, physically healthier, and financially healthier, is by thinking is the way to do it, not by following. And people have to get there. You have to question things. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about today, I've been talking about it with my wife, the fabulous Davine. She was talking about, she watched this special on Woodstock, and she knew that I went to college in Springfield, Mass. at American International College. and it's a private school. Is really blessed to be part of that school. And it was only a couple hours to Woodstock, and she said, "You didn't go. Why didn't you go?" Because she saw for the first time the scope of this thing. Over 400,000 people, no problems. And the March on Washington, D.C., and the effect that that generation had on the entire society in the world culture, whether it was Vietnam or some other issues at the time, that we were able to peacefully assemble and create change by the sheer numbers. And she said, "What happened?" And I said, "Well, what happened was we really did a shitty job of passing the baton to you guys. We didn't realize that you guys needed that much instruction. So the 60s, they're back. And today I'm bringing it back. And we're going to raise some shit today about two big issues that you need to really think about. Not necessarily follow me, because I'm not going to tell you which way to go here. But I am going to tell you to think. My generation from the 60s, where we took it to the streets in a peaceful way, with 400,000 of us could assemble in Woodstock, over 500,000 in Washington, D.C. peacefully and affect change. Okay, we did a lousy job. We didn't know that you guys, you next couple of generations, actually needed an instruction manual. So consider today the instruction manual. So what do I mean when I say it's not the politicians, it's us? So whether you're listening to this after the election or before, it doesn't really matter, okay? What matters is that you take personal responsibility. This bullshit of asking the government to fix this, fix that, fix this, fix that, anything that anybody, any special interest group sees as an injustice, don't you realize when you ask them to do that and demand that they do, you're giving up more and more and more of your freedoms? We don't ask them to fix it. We tell them what we want. Get the fuck out of Vietnam is what we told them in a peaceful way. And that's really what this is really all about today. So I want to talk to you about a couple of issues. The first one is it's not the politicians, it's us. Here's how you clean up politics, okay? Term limits. About 4 or 5 general elections ago, there were 37 states that had term limits on a ballot in the non-binding referendum. What the hell does that mean? It means we got to vote, but it doesn't count. And they went back to Washington, D.C., and they eliminated a line item from it being on the ballot for another 24 years. Guess what? It'll never appear again until you guys, this next 2 generations, get out there and say, we want term limits. All you got to do to clean it up is term limits, number one. And number 2, get the lobbyists out, give them 30 days to clear out, and otherwise jail them, zero tolerance policy. When you have United States senators and United States congressmen saying on national TV, I don't know how I'm going to vote for this because I haven't heard from all the influential people, you have to understand, folks, they're soliciting a bribe. They're saying their vote is for sale. Think about what these people are saying, and don't take it anymore. What's that movie, Honey Network? I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And how do you do it? The same way we did it in the 60s. You've got to take it to the streets. It's all about personal responsibility. You cannot elect the same people that lie, cheat, and steal and re-elect them and have them think that they're doing anything wrong. We gave up this great political system to what it is today. They nominate who's electable. And I'm going to go after the Democrats a little bit here, but I could care less about it because it's not them, it's us. It's my generation did a shitty job of passing the baton to the next generation, but it's really us. So let's talk about this. The talking heads, they ought to be shot full of shit and hung for stinking because they've turned these quote unquote debates, which are not debates at all, into sound bites and clips, depending on what station you're listening to. They're going to try to influence you. Again, it's not them. it's us. Okay, so this a big thing that Elizabeth Warren came out with, and I'm not opposed or for anybody here. Okay, what I'm saying to you is do your freaking homework and hold these people responsible for the bullshit that they're putting out there. Okay, so the Elizabeth Warren came out with this wonderful thing. The result of rising college costs is a huge student loan debt burden that's crushing millions of families and acting as an anchor on our economy. And she wants to spend $1.3 trillion to wipe out the debt. Soon after, Bernie Sanders of Vermont followed with his generous plan, echoing the alarm conveyed by Warren. He explained, "My plan forgives all student debt and ends the absurdity," listen to this bullshit statement, "of sentencing an entire generation to a lifetime of debt for the crime of getting an education." Oh, and everybody claps. It's total bullshit. Let's look at the facts. This is what I mean about thinking. First of all, 66% of all millennials have no student debt at all. That's because they either haven't gone to college or they managed to get out without having to borrow any money. Second, those who have debt tend to have modest burdens relative to their income. A typical four-year college graduates will borrow $28,500 that can be paid back with monthly payments of less than $200. And the average college grad is earning $4,762. Those are the facts. Those are the facts. So Warren, who's trying to rally, more of this give it away, this feel-good thing, and talking about this incredible burden that's crushing the millennials, it's a effing lie. It's not true. So the one of two things. One, she's a liar, and so is Bernie. Or two, they didn't do their homework. Or three, they're counting on you not to think and say, "Oh, isn't that wonderful? A whole generation's getting crushed." It's bullshit. Third, eye-catching six-figure student debt that we read about so often and hear about from Bernie and Warren and the rest of these clowns, and that's what they are, as clowns trying to fool you. I'm not saying Donald's a good choice or a bad choice, or they're a good choice or a bad choice. What I'm saying is make your own choice by thinking, okay? So here's the thing, right? Only 6% of the borrowers have more than $100,000 in debt. Let me say that again. The average debt is $28,000. Only 6% have borrowed over $100,000, and those are the ones that went on to law school or doctor's degrees. And listen to this: their default rates are the lowest among the borrowers with any debt. In other words, the $100,000 plus borrowers, they have the best record of paying the loans back. They're not buckling under it. It's bullshit. It's a lie. And this is what you need to do. You need to think. You need to challenge these things like we did in the 60s. Where did you get those numbers? That the students, 1.6 trillion, you have to realize it sounds like a big number, but it's spread over 20 years of students. It's not that much. And clearly, $28,000 for a college degree is definitely affordable. That's why default rates are among the lowest among borrowers with the highest debt. But policymakers have already taken care of them. In other words, what they're talking about doing, it's already a law with repayment plans that ensure affordable monthly payments and forgive debts that are ultimately unaffordable for 10 or 20 years. This article goes on to talk about what they should be talking about is there are already programs to get people relief so they don't have to default. But they don't want to tell you about that. They want to make it seem like an entire generation is getting crushed. Let's give them one. Let's forgive all of it like there's some kind of good personality. This is bullshit, okay? Now let's move on to another bigger issue, right? This opioid verdict and fine that was just handed down in Oklahoma. And I know what some of you are thinking, finally the drug companies are getting their comeuppance, okay? First of all, if you really want to know, they went after the drug companies in Oklahoma. Let me tell you what happened. This judge, this moron in Oklahoma, right? Don't forget that the drug is legal. It was sanctioned by the FDA, but they're not, of course, going to go after them. And really, the real problem are the doctors that are writing out these prescriptions, but they're not going to go after them individually. So listen to this. In ordering Johnson & Johnson to pony up $572 million, Judge Thad Balkman said the money would help abate the opioid crisis in Oklahoma. Bullshit, okay? Johnson & Johnson did not cause Oklahoma's drug addiction, and Balkman's verdict certainly won't solve it, okay? What it'll do is punish private companies developing and marketing a legal product. Don't you understand that they're going to get that money back anyway? It's going to mean higher prices for you. You can't sue and find fault this way without attacking the real problem. And the real problem is the addicted individual and the doctors that are writing these scripts. That's the real problem, okay? So how will a state of Oklahoma spend the $572 million windfall? Millions invariably will go to trial lawyers. Well, I looked that up. It's close to $200 million. $200 million to the attorneys. That's going to leave 400. That's exactly what happened with the tobacco suits in the 90s. Now, I know you're thinking tobacco, oh, that had cancer attached and all that. Yeah, easy targets, but let's really think this through, okay? The New York Times reported that Alabama used their tobacco money to fund boot camps for juvenile delinquents, alternative schools, metal detectors, and surveillance cameras. New York used tobacco money to put sprinkler systems on public golf courses. Virginia installed, this is what they did with this, billions from the tobacco companies. How much was it? Well, the state spent almost $20 billion on budget shortfalls, state debt, and general purposes. In other words, the money went to the states, and instead of going for programs to teach kids about preventing smoking and so on and so forth, guess what happened? They used the money inappropriately. This is what I'm telling you. And we reelect them. Shame on us. Why would they think they're doing anything wrong? They overspent. They mismanaged the budget. They get a lawsuit against the tobacco companies, and now Johnson & Johnson for opioids. And I'm going to get back to that in a minute. But they get this lawsuit, and what are they doing? Fixing their mistakes. They're not doing an effing thing to help the people that suffered and to create preventative programs. This is outrageous. It's outrageous, and you should be pissed off about it, and you should do something about it, okay? We got a few ideas for you, but number one is think for yourself. In the wake of the Oklahoma verdict, several major drug companies are reportedly considering settlements to end the litigation. But while a settlement might end one industry's nightmare, it will kick off additional frivolous lawsuits against others, and now we're into attorneys. And they all ought to be shot. These ambulance chasers, man, there's a use for them sometimes, but they're going after these big companies. This is the problem with this finding in Oklahoma. It has taken a company that has a legal product that was sanctioned by the government, and that means what's next? Well, maybe alcohol producers, maybe fast food industry, energy companies. How about these electronic devices where these waves are going through the air? And of course, a very easy target for them is the automobile industry. Even the tech industry now blamed, wait till some lawyers get a hold of this, now blamed for the rise in depression and mental health issues among teens is not immune. So people that make video games because their parents are too busy trying to keep up with the Joneses and don't do what they need to do to get the kids' imagination active, they're dropping these iPads and phones in front of kids 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. Well, guess what? Those companies, even though it's the parents and the school systems that aren't doing the job, and the parents need to put pressure on the school systems by participating with the schools on their kids' education. That's what they need to do. That's what they need to do. Another story altogether. But basically, the tobacco companies were easy villains. After all, they sell cancer-causing products with no apparent benefit. And while the pharmaceutical industry creates medically beneficial products, it is nevertheless widely unpopular with the public. Folks, I know what you're thinking. All this horrible opioid addiction. Okay. I want to tell you something. The government for the last 10 years has worked very cutely to not fight drugs, but bring them in and get a piece of the action. That's what they're doing. Why? Because we're not thinking. It's inconvenient to march on Washington. It's inconvenient to get 300,000 or 400,000 people together. So if it's too inconvenient for you to think, then we're going to get what we get, because all these industries, like the automotive industry, the entertainment industry, the energy companies, and so forth, folks, they're just going to pass that on to you anyway. And the money that they get on these lawsuits, well, they've already pissed it away. It's not clear which industry will be next. However, what is clear is that when trial lawyers come for it, the negative legal precedent will already have been set by a moron in Oklahoma. This is so wrong. It's incredible. Now, some of you know, I've been clean and sober for 31 years. I was at a prayer meeting this morning about that. Drugs over here on Hawaii, they're just like they are anyplace else. And I'm grateful to be participating in recovery for other people, and that's how I keep my recovery intact. But the bottom line is, that's the problem. The problem isn't suing people that are doing something legal and opening this up for everybody. So, number one, with this election coming up, question these people. Ask the tough questions. When they put numbers out there and how they're going to fix it, ask them, where did you get those numbers? And go look them up. Vote for the right person. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't matter, because this is what we should demand of our politicians. What we should actually demand of our politicians. Let me see. I don't know how to get this thing up, honey, so to answer people's questions here. But, okay. Anyway, forget where I was. Doesn't matter. The main thing is to question authority. I'm going to confess, because I can't tell you to take personal responsibility if I'm not. My generation, we did a lousy job in the 60s of passing the baton. Like I said, we didn't know you needed an instruction manual. Now you have an instruction manual, okay? Ask the tough questions. When somebody puts out numbers, ask for verification. You can find the numbers I'm talking about in both the New York Times and the Boston Globe and the Washington Post, okay? They're all linked together anyway. The Times owns the Boston Globe. But the point is, you need to read and think and question these things. And the way that you do it is peacefully assemble. Because if you don't, then whatever's going on is going to keep going on. And they're going to keep taking your money. And can you imagine that? Over 20 billion spent on budget shorts that Philip Morris, not on tobacco prevention, not on educational programs in the school. They don't want to bring back arts. They don't want to bring back music for one simple reason, right? They don't want you thinking. You need to demand thinking from yourself. You need to demand it. So I need to take personal responsibility. I'll take all the responsibility for us not writing an instruction manual, because I like writing them. Folks, think. Become a self-directed thinker. And one of the things that I think is a really good idea for everybody is to check out the Master Key Experience. Go to masterkeyexperience.com. Get on the early notification list. I can't read them. It doesn't, this thing doesn't move for me. Well, now it is. Okay. Now I got it. Okay. So, hey, Consuelo, good to have you here. Godiva, the Roman circus, distract from the real issues by entertainment and violence. Exactly. They had them in the Colosseum, people killing each other, right? Entertain them. Nothing new. Nothing new. What's the difference? Thank you, Karen. I'm just looking to see if I missed any questions. So what do I really think? I think you got it, Christy. Okay, what I think is we did a lousy job of passing it on. Sorry for being repetitive here. I'm pretty worked up today because when I see people, high quality people like Elizabeth Warren, like Bernie Sanders, just bullshitting their way through, it pisses me off because they're the same type of people that take these massive settlements from these companies that are doing business legally, okay, doing business legally, and they're going to spend it to cover their mistakes. When you see a U.S. senator say on national TV, people have to stop thinking they're entitled to Social Security payments. When you see a United States senator at a hearing saying, if we send more troops to Guam, won't it tip over? Folks, who the fuck are we electing here? What?
You're right. Know what the person that you're electing stands for.
Yeah.
And don't vote for people that take PAC money.
Yeah, don't vote for people that take PAC money. That's from my wife, okay? Okay, which is money from lobbyists. You know, you can go see their voting record. Go look at their voting record. You know, what we really need to do is overhaul the system. And this generation and the millennials, and I see Dana on here, you know, you guys need to take it to the streets and make it right, okay, by thinking and compromising, because this is what every politician should be doing. The Democratic debates are shameful, and the way the talking heads are putting them out, it's even more shameful. They're turning it into entertainment rather than just conveying the issues to you. But this is my ideal world. Let's say I'm running for an office. Should say, well, there's two of us up here on the debate tonight, and this is what I think we should do with the money. X amount should go to the schools and yada, yada, yada. And here's why I think that. And this much should go for defense. Now, I know that my worthy opponent also has some good ideas. And that's what our democracy is all about. That I'm going to express my point of view. And I can't wait to hear what she has to say. Because in the end, you guys are going to vote, and we need to come out of this united. What's happening is they're turning it into such a freak show, and they're hurting each other so badly, and there's a reason for that. And I'm going to share that with you because you need to know this as you think these things through. But we need to come out of these elections united, like the best of two winners got elected, not the least of the two villains, okay? And the country ends up divided because they're so negative towards each other. So here's a piece of information for you. I'd suggest if you don't want to buy into this, look it up. There's a concept called carrots and sticks. And sociologists and psychologists have talked about this for decades. And what it means is in the way back in the caveman days and early civilization, the men or whatever went out and looked for carrots and other things that would perpetuate the species, mates and food, okay? And if they ran into sticks, sticks would kill them. So you come, I come, Dominica comes, Ben comes, Consuelo comes, Dana comes from a long, long line of really good stick avoiders. Does everybody understand that? So we have what's known as a predisposition or a negativity bias. You all have a negativity bias, and I know that you all think you have a positive mental attitude. So I'm going to challenge you to go to masterkeyexperience.com and download the 7-day mental diet, and you'll find out that what I'm telling you is true. We have a negativity bias. Now, without that, you wouldn't have survived, because your great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy knew when to fight, and he won, and he knew when to run, okay? Fight or flight is really part of this negativity bias. Now, why is that important in terms of what we're coming up to in a very, very important election year? Because these people know all about carrots and sticks. They know all about how the human mind has a negativity bias, and you're going to remember negative things. They stick like Velcro because of our great granddaddies and mommies passing that on. They survived. We don't live in that world anymore, but we're genetically predisposed to a negativity bias, and we're going to remember the negative things that they say. We need to demand that they don't do that anymore. We need to demand that they respect their opponent. We need to demand that they help us all come out of this thing unified. That's what we need to do. I would love to be on stage with an opponent that had totally different views than me, and we learned from each other and turned it over to you and said, we know that whatever choice you have will be the best choice for the country, because that's what it's really all about. That's what it's really all about. And they don't get it. You know what they do get? They're not willing to do that. You know why? You won't remember that. They don't trust that you'll remember that. We don't have a political problem. We don't have a poverty problem. We don't have a war problem. We don't have a terrorist problem. We have a self-directed thinking problem. And self-directed thinkers, like those of us from the 60s, okay, those of us from the 60s, demanded more of ourselves. We demanded more of the people that were in authority. And we did it in a peaceful way, but the numbers were so huge, couldn't avoid it. You know what the problem is? The government has allowed things to transpire so that our number one fear, your number one fear, it's not death, it's not terrorism, it's not war, and it's not speaking in public. It's inconvenience. We don't want to be inconvenienced. It's inconvenient to do these things. So if you think they're inconvenient, then you got no right complaining if you don't want to take personal responsibility in your community. And I hope I'm challenging you enough. I'll quit belaboring the point. Okay. All right. Self-directed thinkers. Anyway, I really appreciate being here. And it was a lot of fun today. I hope that you'll question everything. It's fine if you love Donald. It's fine if you hate Donald. Just don't hate the people, anybody at all. That's the bottom line. You might hate somebody's point of view, but find somebody on the other side that supports what you think is important and demand from them the best that a human being is capable of, and tell them to quit manipulating by pounding on negativity, because that's what we're going to remember. You see, the cavemen remembered where the sticks were. They avoided the sticks. And negativity bias, it's in all of us. So have some fun this week. Go to masterkeyexperience.com. You can grab that free PDF there and go on the mental diet. I think if you do, you'll find out, holy crap, that crazy guinea Pollock on Kauai is right. I am so much more negative than I thought. By the way, this mental diet will be the hardest thing you've ever done, but you'll start coming from a positive place. And that's where creativity and new ideas and new frontiers and new challenges happen. Peace be the journey, and we'll see you on the beaches of the world.
Mahalo for listening. The Taking Charge podcast is a place that you can count on to receive the truth. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure to leave a review and subscribe to our channel. The show notes and links to anything we discussed today can be found at the website, takingchargethepodcast.com. Be sure to reserve your spot for the Master Key Experience. Early notification scholarships are limited. Mahalo and aloha.